What is up, guys? It's time to talk about the new Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. I gotta give you my thoughts and how it fits into the rest of this franchise, because I do have a lot of maybe unpopular opinions about this one. We'll see what the comments show at the end of this. I had never watched Mission Impossible. To quote my mom, she's not really a Tom Cruise girl, so she never really showed them to me when I was younger. I watched the first Mission Impossible about a year ago. That was around the same time that I was trying to get into Jason Bourne, and I just found them both to be kind of fine. I ended up choosing something else, and I never really finished the franchise until last week. So knowing that this new movie was coming out, I decided to watch the rest of them. So I'll give you a quick recap of where I think each movie is in a ranking order, and then we'll see where Dead Reckoning fits in here. So for me, dead last is Mission Impossible 2. This movie is so horny for no reason. It's kind of funny, but it's also kind of not funny at all because it's so weird. I think if you made a drinking game out of how many hair flips or how many slow-mos, you might die. I think I got up and did laundry in the middle of this movie, so I think that's pretty telling on my part. Then in 5th place, I have the original Mission Impossible. Now, it's not terrible by any means. It's a little dated. It may not age the best. I did really like how suddenly we were into this Ethan Hunt against the world. Everyone is gone. There's no one you can depend on. I think that sets a strong tone for the franchise as a whole. And of course, the score is iconic. You know, at this point, it's beaten so much into our culture, I kind of forget how big of a deal it was and how fresh it was. I wouldn't be surprised if on a rewatch I might switch things around, but for now, that's kind of where it is. Then in 4th place at this point, I had Ghost Protocol, which might be a little unpopular because I know people love that movie. I'm sure if I saw it in IMAX when it happened, it would probably be a lot higher for me too. I mean, I know that Burj Khalifa scene where he's just climbing up the side of the building has got to be amazing on the big screen, and I do wish I had gotten a chance to see that. I loved that in the 4th one we were getting this goofier side with this like super secret technology, kind of that classic spy cliche we expected when we were growing up as kids. But weirdly enough for me, I actually thought this went a little too goofy. And the reason I think that is because Mission Impossible 3 left such a big hole in my chest. I loved how much that one hurt and how serious it was. Immediately following up with a little more goofy side actually left me a little disappointed. So for me, actually, MI3 goes above Ghost Protocol. And you can't sit here and tell me that Philip Seymour Hoffman is not the best villain of this franchise, because he is. So for 2nd place, I have Rogue Nation. This is where we first get Christopher McQuarrie as a director, and I think that really makes a difference. Him and Tom Cruise combined can make a fantastic movie, and they have since they've started. The addition of Rebecca Ferguson is exactly what this franchise needed to have a breath of fresh air. There was also so many moments where I was concerned because every time we tried to get something done, we had to take 2 steps back, constantly fighting against the grain, and I don't know if we were ever gonna make it. So for me, Fallout is the best of this franchise. I gave it 5 stars. It's a beautiful thing to look at. I can just stare at these beautiful scenery shots all day long. The initial Halo jump being like one of the first things you see in this movie, being a real stunt, is amazing. And I love that we wrapped up the Julia plotline. I was so tired of all of these women just kind of getting expended from movie to movie. We finally kept one woman, and then we finally wrapped up that Julia plotline, and I think it wrapped up very nicely in a way that speaks a lot to who Ethan Hunt is, right? We're really hammering in that Ethan Hunt will not choose the greater good over one life, and you have to understand why. You have to understand who he loves, who he cares for, and dismissing Julie would have been a massive mistake. So the fact that they brought her back, they wrapped her up, they made her from a nurse to a doctor, which I appreciate. They set on their own ways. They're happy with where they were in the past, and they're happy with where they are now. What a beautiful way to wrap it up. This movie was like a love letter to the entire franchise, and I think that's why Fallout works so well. So after all that ranting, here's our list. Moving forward, there will be spoilers in this video, so if you've gotten this far and you haven't seen the movie, pause it, come back to it later, because I would love to talk about this without spoilers, but unfortunately, my qualms have a lot to do in spoiler territory. The first thing I want to say about this movie is, why did they fridge Ilsa? She was your best addition, and you fridged her. For a franchise that emphasizes how important these people are to Ethan Hunt, it feels like the character was cast aside. And maybe it wouldn't have felt that way if she wasn't literally cast aside so that another female could take over. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna eat my words when part 2 comes out. I'm sure there's gonna be some explanation, but right now, it's not sitting well with me. Now, that's not to say this isn't a good movie. I mean, like I said, Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise make a fantastic movie. The storyline is just irking me. I feel like it almost would have worked better if Grace's character was like a child or a teenager, and it was like, oh, I'm showing you the ropes, because that's kind of where it was going, instead of having one woman being killed so another one can enter the picture. Especially with how frequently we went through women in this franchise. Once we got Rebecca Ferguson, like I said, it was awesome. It was a breath of fresh air. I loved seeing her. So there's a big disconnect there for me, and that happened pretty early on in the movie. And since that event, I was sitting in there in the movie just like, I don't want to watch the rest of this. You know what I mean? Of course I did want to watch the rest of it, and I did, and it was good, but I was so butthurt. And I was leaving the theater, and I was thinking about, you gotta let this go, but I can't, right? I mean, putting women in refrigerators is a big trope. That the Mission Impossible franchise was better than this, and maybe they are. Like I said, in part 2, maybe there will be the whole picture and I'll get it. For right now, that's the big thing holding me back. So aside from that, I thought the action was good, but there weren't those big moments that kind of make you stop breathing the way that there had been in other films. Of course, we have that motorcycle off the cliff, but we saw that in trailers. I was expecting a little more because again, it's a Mission Impossible franchise. And that's the hard thing about setting expectations for yourself, is you kind of have to live up to them. So for me, this kind of fell into that part 1 syndrome. When movies split up into part 1 and part 2, the part 1 notoriously is never as good as part 2 and may not be as good as the franchise leading up to it. There were some interesting new characters that were brought into the story. I mean, especially Paris. I thought she was cool and cryptic. I guess we did keep her alive. So we'll see more of her. I'm curious to see how she unravels. I like the White Widow. I think she's fun. I just ultimately could never really connect to Haley Atwell's character, Grace, because again, she just simply replaced Ilsa. I think the storyline relied too much on you caring about Grace. Personally, I just didn't. In terms of the theme, right, we're having this like AI thing. It's very current. The issue for me is in Rogue Nation, our villain was always one step ahead. And that was a big thing they emphasized in that movie. Oh, he thinks that we're gonna do this, so we should do the other way. Well, now we're just rehashing that out with this AI. So it felt very much a sidestep in this franchise rather than a step forward. The it factor, the heart, the love was missing. Of course, Ethan had several lines about, oh, I care about my friends, I'm not gonna make that choice. But at the same time, the writing and the story and something about it just didn't seem to back up his words like it had in the previous movies. I'm struggling between a 3.5 and a 4. I originally gave it a 3.5. Then I upped it to 4. And then I slept on it, and I think I might give it back down to 3.5. And that may frustrate some people, and I really am going against the grain here, but I think that's what I'm gonna do, because the thing that made me fall in love with this franchise literally 2 weeks ago was how much love was there. Like my friend Sydney said, Mission Impossible is about being a good friend. And this just felt like it was missing that love. The treatment of its characters just didn't feel right. I am excited about part 2. I hope this wraps it up in a way that I wasn't expecting, that makes it better than I originally rated it. I would love to eat my words in this video. So those are my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please like and subscribe so I can make some more of these videos.